Everybody, Jack Olmsted, digital reporter, Seattle PI Reader Blog, Video Blogging 206. Tom O'Rourke, he is going to talk to us today about his revolutionary, evolutionary paddle.
Hi, Jack. I'm fine. I'm here in Seattle, and it's actually a pretty good day. That's nice.
It's always a nice day in Seattle when the sun's out.
Oh, God. It's beautiful. I've been involved in pickleball for about 40 years, playing it when it first came out with those handmade wood paddles, and I learned to play it and love it as just a kid jumping around the court. And then about 5 years ago, I started playing again. Here I am in my early 60s and started playing it again and found that it was growing really quickly. And all of a sudden, I took my wooden paddle to play, and everybody was playing with these great paddles, and I didn't know anything about it. And then I learned that, yes, like you said, somebody in 1984 invented flooring material from an aircraft and made a very nice paddle, light, quick, and hit really well. The only problem was it kind of had some noise. So I started talking to a friend of mine as I was playing, and we said, God, what a pity about the noise. I mean, is there anything, how come they can't make a quiet pickleball paddle? My friend was Mark Nakagawa, who'd been in the sports business for a long time. His family had a retail sports chain, and he was involved in all sorts of paddle introductions, from Prince to Tony Trabert, who had the first composite tennis racket. And he said, I know why. It's because there's no solid surface around the paddle that you can dampen anything with. And I said, oh, really? You can't do that with the edge guard? And he said, no, it's just rubber or plastic. It doesn't have any structural function. So we started talking, and we came up with an idea. This is our little TORQ paddle, an idea to put a solid edge guard all the way down into the handle, carbon fiber edge guard, that would allow us to put this material, the same material that's out there now, carbon fiber, graphite and fiberglass, different honeycomb materials, aluminum, Nomex, and to put it inside of it with some gel tape to dampen the vibration that happens with this paddle. And it made all the difference in the world. All of a sudden we were talking about, gosh, edge guard, it's still an edge guard, and yet it provides a structural function that can allow us to do all sorts of interesting things to it, including taking it apart and putting a different kind of surface in it. So we started just kind of talking about this as we were playing and said, hey, that's kind of neat. And then I said, we ought to write all this down and maybe put a patent on it. That was about 2.5 years ago. So we started our patent process then, and shortly thereafter, I went and worked as product development person for the people who invented the game, which was Pickleball Inc., and helped them develop some paddles, but not this paddle. So I left there just 8 months later after I'd helped them build their Elite series, and said, we ought to pick this back up. And so just about 6 months or so ago, we began looking at actually taking this and manufacturing it. I'm holding a prototype that we had made that has all of the elements of the paddle itself. And it's interesting that, like a lot of the sports, like tennis, a sport evolves based on ideas that have been generations in generations of players. Wooden tennis rackets were around forever. And then all of a sudden, somebody said, we could do something interesting. And I see you have a picture there of the Wilson T2000. That was one of the first ideas that kind of thought outside the box for the tennis world. And it wasn't well received by the tennis association, but it began to pick up steam as Jimmy Connors and other people started playing with it, because it actually helped adjust the variables of play, the sweet spot where it was, the distance from the handle, the vibration, and other things that wood wasn't able to do. So we took the same kind of concept and are just applying all the existing rules and all the existing elements of edge guard, surface, handle, grip, and we're kind of throwing it, looking at it from a new perspective, and that is what would happen if we created this solid structure around it. And it all of a sudden opened up all sorts of things for us, like it did for tennis, where we can now envision having ideas like changing the perimeter weighting. As long as it doesn't affect the bounce and it doesn't affect the any trampoline effect, we can actually change how this paddle can be configured. So we realized that we had a whole new approach to this business and this sport. So the thing you're looking at on screen now is this paddle and its elements. And if you move forward a little bit more, Jack, you'll see that that will come apart. Those handle comes off, a couple quick turn screws, and all of a sudden that frame can open up, that carbon fiber frame. And so you can see it goes all the way in the handle. And a new element can come in, a new paddle, a new, what we call an insert, can go inside. And that frame can be reconstructed and the handle put back on, etc. And all of a sudden you've got a brand new kind of paddle with a different surface. All these, again, being approved by the USAPA. What you're looking at right now, that green, is an actual gel tape. And I'm looking at it here. I want you to see this. That gel tape goes around the surface. I'm going to pull it off a little bit here. That goes around the edge, around the insert. And this is a gel that was developed for the racing world to reduce vibration in parts of the racing cars. And it's amazing what vibration can be dampened throughout a race car. Well, the same thing here. This tape then fits inside this frame like the animation showed. And the best part about it is that a user, the player himself, can easily disassemble this within about 2 minutes. Take it apart, take a different surface. This happens to be our quiet surface, the most quiet polyurethane surface and insert that we could find, that is further dampened in noise and vibration by this tape. And all of a sudden you can take it apart. And if you'll get back to me, Jack, my camera, you can see that the paddle itself will come apart by undoing the end of the handle, which releases the handle. It's a turned cog that fits in there. It undoes the handle, it splits apart. There are anchoring devices at the tip of this handle that go into the insert to lock it in place so it won't move or the handle won't slide off. And then you can take it apart, put the other one into it, reassemble it, and you have a whole new paddle. And you can do that with all sorts of surfaces and honeycomb insides to get different effects depending how you're playing. Most people play with 2 or 3 different paddles, depending on where they're playing, outdoor, windy, indoor, whether they're playing against finesse players or power players. And so they carry $85 paddles in their bag. These inserts cost $31 retail, not 85. You can imagine why, because it's so simple to produce. You don't have to put the handle on and the grip and everything else. They're very easy to produce and therefore very inexpensive. So somebody can have these on in their bag and switch out and basically have as many paddles kinds as they want. So it was a very interesting idea, but mostly just to solve the problem of, gosh, can't we do anything about the noise? So for the first time, we can do something about the noise, and we can even do things about some of the, I want to say single dimension of a paddle and add dimension to it by changing some of the weight characteristics. So the USAPA has looked at this under non-disclosure since we have it in a patent, and they realize that it's following all the rules, but we simply have to manufacture it, get it to them, and since the materials are the exact same materials that are being sold now, we're confident that all the tests will allow this to be approved. As long as there's not extra surface grip, as long as there's a lot of other things that we're not trying to do, like add trampoline effect to this. All we're really trying to do is to quiet it down and to allow a user to switch out. Now, not only do the inserts switch out, but the handle switches out. This happens to be a pretty square handle, and it's fairly small. A lot of people like a smaller grip handle. We have different sizes. We have different shapes, including some actually new ideas that will allow, it's called an axe handle idea, that will allow you to have the paddle deeper into the palm securely. Other people play with it with the handle sticking out. So we know that that characteristic we'll want to change as well to be customized to the player without having to buy an entire paddle. So all of the ideas of customization fit into this little structure because we designed it, as you saw in the CAD drawings, we designed it with locking functions and with areas to put the gel. Very interesting idea. So we're going to be starting to manufacture this here towards the end of fall, hopefully for the Christmas season. We are raising money to do it, and we have a crowdfunding campaign at Indiegogo. If you look up on Indiegogo, you'll see, if you wouldn't mind going to that site. If you'll scroll down a little bit, that's Mark Nakagawa and I. There's our paddle. Nice expression, Tom. There's our paddle with the insert. And if you scroll down just a little bit, the top one says Quiet Performance. That is this insert here that I was holding up. You wouldn't mind flashing to me for 1 second. So this insert and its design has a picture of a soundproofing wall in a studio, which I thought was conveyed the message. The other one below it on that page, the blue one, is a graphite with Nomex core. And that's the same as a lot of the early graphite ones, the same as several of the more popular paddles out there that have graphite surfaces and Nomex honeycomb cores. So those are our first two. And when we sell this, it's going to be coming with both the blue insert, which is the graphite, and our soundproofing image quiet insert, and both of them will come in one package. But as we come up with new ideas and new insert materials and new handle shapes, and frankly even grip ideas, we're working with a company that does a gel grip that dampens the vibration even more for the hand. It becomes now an interesting matching customizable concept, and it's very, very interesting. So again, just trying to solve one problem and switching the design, the technical design of the elements allowed all sorts of new ideas to come. So it's been very interesting, and we've done some testing on it, but people are interested in not having to pay $89.95 or $100 for a different kind of paddle, and to be able to modify it themselves. Also,
can consumers modify the paddle themselves? So if they want a little bit more weight or a little less weight in the handle, the head, the sides, do they have that option?
well, first of all, I want to say that yes, they can modify the weight by putting, in a future version, we're going to have little screws that go around the edge of this, but each one of those different configurations with different elements, each one has to be approved by the USAPA. So, for example, if we have one with two screws in the 2 o'clock position of this paddle, we have to have that approved. If we have one with screws at the 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock position, I guess that's 2:30 position here, that's a different configuration that also needs to be approved by the USAPA. If this paddle, the graphite, no mix, no screws in it, this handle, that has to be approved. If we offer another handle, we have to get that approved. So each step along the way is in coordination with and approval from the USAPA. So the rules state that you cannot take your paddle or any paddle that exists that's been approved by the USAPA and modify it yourself. Some people put lead tape around the edges. That is getting outside of what's been approved by the USAPA. So they're trying to set the standard for the kind of paddle that can be played in a tournament. And if you go beyond that, if you modify it, if you add more weight to it, if you carve out parts of the paddle surface to make it lighter, all of that disqualifies it from tournament play. So
Can you paint the surface of the paddle? Like if you just want some spray paint and you just spray paint something on it?
no, you actually can't, and play with it in a tournament. I mean, there are
Play with it in a tournament. How about paddles that you've been playing with for years and the paint has chipped off the paddle? Would that be deemed illegal to play since the paint is gone?
You know, that's a very interesting question. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that each paddle that has been painted, there is usually the same paddle out in the market without the paint on it that has been approved. So I think it's a gray area there, but I know that every time we changed the paint or the vinyl covering or the roughness of the surface of a paddle, we made sure, when I was at the other pickleball company, we made sure we sent it in, had them tested, had them just check the abrasion to get it approved. So I would imagine that should there be wear and tear and it all of a sudden made it much more abrasive or something, that there might be an argument for that.
So their issue is abrasiveness. If the wear and tear made it slicker, they wouldn't care.
You know, I believe that's correct. There are some paddles out there that are very slick. Pure fiberglass, for example, is very slick. There's a paddle from Pickleball Inc. that happens to be my favorite, which is the Elite Skill paddle, and it's got almost no paint on it at all. It's just like their Champion aluminum, and it's just pure fiberglass, and it's very brittle. It's a great playing, lots of pop, lots of power. Nothing between you between the ball and the surface, except some very small paint areas. So that was approved. It's within the guidelines of the abrasion. It's within the guidelines of the responsiveness and the brittleness. So I believe that each of these configurations is about the roughness and about its springiness, its ability to provide a certain kind of bounce to approved balls. So I think that speaking of balls, I think there's going to be kind of an evolution. We're calling it an evolution, but an evolution in the ball area as well. You're seeing lots of new balls being introduced, primarily, I think, because of the sound problems. The outdoor balls are so brittle. They're wonderful to play with, but they're very, very, very loud. So a lot of places, we've had 3 now groups, the retirement communities who've contacted us since we went live a week ago, who want these paddles simply because of the quietness. So it's interesting that if they can get around the quietness and still have the performance of a great surface, then I think we have a winner. Some of these places said we've been forced to play with sponge foam balls, and it just isn't the same game. If we could affect it through this quiet, gel-taped, gel in the handle, quiet everything down by 50%, I think it would make a significant impact in the retirement community world. These guys had just put in 12 new courts, and they had to immediately go away from the ball they were using and play with the sponge rubber ball during certain times of the day. So anyway, it's based on see a picture here of all the pickleballs. There are really only 2 main balls that are being used in tournaments. One is a Judd's soft, big hold ball that I see a picture of there. And then there's the Durafast 40, which is from Pickleball Inc. That has been the standard for all 7 or 8 of the nationals out there. It is the very best ball to use outdoors. It's got the best durability. It's got the best bounce. Unfortunately, with most of the surfaces, it's also one of the loudest balls you can hit. So other people have tried to introduce new ones, and for us, it's a very curious element of this game, because we too want to impact the ball question. But the most important thing, if you look at tennis, the tennis ball really hasn't changed much at all. That element, I think, is going to stay the same. So we have to impact the vibration, the noise, the dampening. We have to be able to do it. And the key is this carbon fiber solid edge guard into the handle. So again, we patented this a couple of years ago, and I know that people have talked about having modifiable handle shapes and things, but our PICU have some of our patent drawings there. It's an interesting approach. And we're going to be, one of the other things that I'm noticing, the millions of people who have joined in the last couple of years, and this has grown to almost 2 million people this year. A lot of those are coming from the tennis, squash, and racquetball sports. And if you've looked at those sports and you've looked at the quality of materials that they're using in there, my God, the carbon fiber, the graphics, everything about it is so high end. Those tennis, squash, and racquetball players are coming into this sport with pretty high expectations of equipment. And I'm not saying that the pickleball paddles aren't improving and looking really good, but they're still a paddle. They're still they have the restrictions of a single piece. So it's an interesting idea that tennis players would recognize this carbon fiber frame edge guard to be more like the things they're used to playing with. So, but again, we were just trying to solve a problem, the quiet problem, and from it gathered a lot of interesting approaches to things in the game. If you've played much pickleball with today's paddles, you know that this edge guard comes off all the time. It's also kind of it's rubber or it's plastic, and it catches on the surface. And if you've ever had that happen, it messes up your shot pretty badly. But it also tears the edge guard off. And once that edge guard starts coming off, the edge of the paddle itself, the honeycomb material, begins to deteriorate. I can show you a wonderful picture of a paddle I have that has deteriorated badly because of that. So people go home, they try to glue it back on and everything else. This would never happen because of the solid carbon fiber edge guard. So we think it's going to be 10 times more durable than the plastic ones and certainly never come off. So anyway, that's the idea behind TORQ. We have other interesting product concepts as well we're working on, also within the pickleball realm, that have to do with alternatives to honeycomb. So we'll talk about that in future.